This is the Great Awakening Crash Course, Module 3, and it's time to talk about planet Earth's ascension. Alright, so far we have established a couple of things. In Module 1, we talked about the physical reality, more specifically the control system that we're living in, or the Matrix as is commonly known. In Module 2, we talked about our nature, who we are, where we come from, what's our purpose, the existential questions. We got deep into the metaphysical aspect of ourselves, and now we're getting into probably the most important topic, that is the process of ascension. That is what we're talking about now, and all these new circles and new age kind of language are talking about 4D and 5D ascension. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Again, all of these topics is a good reminder to say that all of these topics, everything that I say here, it's going to have a deep rabbit hole, and it has a lot more to it that I can possibly explain in the short videos. So to start up part 1, this video, it's going to be about the ancient prophecies and how they knew it, and how does that affect us, or what does it mean today now. When we talk about ancient prophecies, we can go directly into the most common one that everybody was really hyped up about, which was the Mayans. The Mayans talked about the end of times 2012. This is a good time to just say that a lot of the language that you hear and read online, or interpretations for, say, mainstream media, it's always altered in a way that it means something else, and it's usually, as you know, a little sensationalist. 2012 didn't mean the end of the world, as many people were, some of them were expecting actually, but others were hopeful that was going to happen. So neither of them happened, and the reason for this is because it's not the end of the world, it's not the end of times, it's the end of a time, it's the end of a cycle. And cycle is a word that I'm going to use a lot in this module because it has to do with the nature of our reality. So 2012 simply marked the end of a cycle, the end of a time, if you will, and it opened, of course, the gate to a new time, to a new cycle. And we're going through that process right now. There's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of misinformation, as always, and there's also a lot of conjectures about what's actually happening. So I'm going to give you my interpretation, of course, of the information that has come to me and that I've been able to digest, to see, and kind of make sense, connecting the dots. But as always, it's your own discernment to make out of this whatever it may be. So talking about the Mayans had a beautiful calendar that it's, again, a rabbit hole in and of itself, but it marked a lot of things astronomically and within the Earth that cannot be explained, obviously, by new science, which is the conventional science that has been developing for the past 300 years or so. And it's a good question to know, how do they know it? That's another question that we're going to ask a lot. Just to give you an example, a Baktun, which is a time or a specific cycle that happens in the Mayan calendar, which is approximately 400 years. I think it's around 390 something years, 394 if I remember correctly. It actually correlates exactly with the movement of the Earth inside, which is something that was found recently, just a couple of years ago. And this is actually the magnetic field rotation of the Earth. So how do they know it? And more importantly, why was that important to the Mayans if they were just rudimentary civilization in thousands of years ago that didn't know much about what we think we know now, science? So this all comes to play to know that these people knew the cycles of time, and we're gonna get into how they knew all this stuff in a little bit. Now, other people that knew about this, obviously, were the Gnostics, and the Gnostics talk about the coming of a new age at the end of times. The Hindus also talk about the yugas, which is specific time frames that we go through, and it also has the marking of a great year. The great year is specifically what we're talking about now. You also know this as the age of Aquarius, which is something that is extrapolated also from the New Testament, and Jesus talked about this in parables as he usually did. And there's always something in ancient cultures that tells us that we were going to get to this point in time. You can see a lot of anomalies into this planet's, say, history when we reach, say, the 1800, 1900 year mark of what we know the current era. And in this time, we can see that there is an explosion in population, there's an explosion in technology, and of course of information that we're getting in now. All of this makes sense as we reach this point, but more specifically also because of the situation of the Earth and the population itself. So without getting too deep into that, the point is that the ancients knew exactly that at this time we were going to enter a new time. Now, let's go to the modern, let's say, findings that we have. In 2009, coincidentally at the end of December, it's going to be 11 years now, NASA realized that we are getting now into an interstellar cloud of energy particles that it's compressing, if you will, the heliosphere, which is the atmosphere of the sun, as we travel through it. Of course, this makes sense because we as a planet are rotating around the sun, and the sun is rotating possibly around another star, which we can talk about in the next video. But the purpose of this is also that the sun is also moving around the galaxy, and that has, just like we have 365 days to go around the sun also, and all the stars around it, have their specific time to go around the galaxy. And because of the position that we are in, we can see and calculate where are we in the galaxy. The whole point of this is to know that our conventional science has also realized that we're compressing our atmosphere, if you will, of the whole solar system, and we're now getting into a highly energetic field or clouds that we're going through, and this is also affecting somehow the solar system. We're going to talk about a little bit climate change and how is this related to that in the next video. But for now, we just know that the ancients knew about this, and what does that mean now? So we need to talk about now the nature of the galaxy or the universe itself. We live in an evolving universe. There is a cosmic consciousness that is updating over and over again, and it has specific patterns, blueprints of how this happens over time on each part of, say, the pieces that makes up the cosmos, the galaxy, the stars, the planets, and of course the whole universe. There is an underlying pattern that exists in everything in nature, and this has to do with geometries. Geometry can get really deep when we get into the specifics of how this works from a quantum level to the macro scale of the cosmos. But the really important part here is to know that there is, say, almost like a chart that we have specific ley lines in the galaxy and the sun, the planets. Everything in astrology has to do with this too, the way these lines converge and make, say, specific strong points. All of this is to say that our planet and the solar system, of course, is not only finishing an internal cycle, but also an external cycle with the galaxy as we see it. And this is it's propulsing the Earth to a new age. What's really relevant to know right now is that because of all this that is happening at a physical level, the planet is changing. And that change is what we talk about Ascension. Now, in the Law of One, which is the series that I cover in my channel mainly, we talk about the process of ascension. The harvest also is very relevant to this. And when we talk about this, we know that there is also a specific time. 1981, when this channeling was done, Ra talked about around 2012 it was going to be the time of harvest. And we now have been knowing by other channelings, specifically the one of Quo, that we are entering that space, and 4 density as we know it in law of one terms is the new layer of existence that is being available right now for the planet. So that is the creation, if you want to see it this way, of the new sphere around the planet that is creating this habitability, if you will, of 4 density beings. We as 3rd density beings are going through the process of ascension, because as the planet evolves, we evolve with it. We are part of the planet. We didn't just come out or sprout out of the planet as some random occurrence, nor are we some foreigners to the planet that are kind of riding this mass of dirt and water around the sun. So everything is evolving over time, and this is the really important part when we talk about the ascension process and how the ancients knew it. They knew, and they talked about a new era. You talked about the new age that is coming and how we need to prepare for it. And that is the purpose of all this work that we're doing and everything that we're seeing, all the changes, all the friction that we're seeing in society, in cultures, in our personal relationships, in our relationship with the environment is also changing. Our heart is inevitably opening a lot more. And so we see this. On a personal level, it seems a lot more obvious than when we see it on the macro level, when we talk about the planet, because we see so much conflict and everything that is going on. We need to remember that this is being made collectively. Everything that we see on a macro scale is what we put, our output of how we see the world. And this is why some ancient teachings, and not so ancient, probably from last century, there was a lot of talking about this, that you need to become the change that you want to see in the world, because that's just your heart telling you that you want to see that world. And as long as you project that, trust me, that information is getting into the field and it's being projected somehow here, and it's being it's affecting other people. So just in the same way, positive or negative, they're both being uploaded to the field of energy of the planet, and all of that is being downloaded by everybody else. So that's why, even though it sounds funny and it sounds hippie and everything else for some people, but it's the truth. You know, happy thoughts, positive thoughts, loving thoughts, and compassionate feelings towards everybody is what we need to be doing right now. So this is the opening of the Ascension and of this module 3, where we're going to continue talking about this process and what it means. But to wrap up, what we talked about here is that our ancients knew it. And just a good reminder about how the ancients knew it. We now know, of course, that extraterrestrials, which is another thing that's been coming out now a lot more in 2020, they have been here on Earth for a long time. They have been here and coming and going for a long time. They have been influencing positively and negatively, depending on their origins and what their philosophies are. We're now living in a heavily influenced negative philosophy that was handed down by those who follow me in the Law of One would know, the Orion Group, which have been training basically the humans here who wanted to have this negative philosophy. The point is that they have been communicating with humans for thousands of years. Most of our ancient cultures, especially those suppressed or discredited as barbarians or definitely ignorance of how this universe works, because we, with our very short 300 years of science, know more than them. They got this information from them, at least from channeled information, and at most, in some cases, as Ra came here almost 12,000 years ago already, and other groups, they incarnated here and they actually helped and trained humans. So again, these are topics that we can go very deep into, but that's not the purpose of this. That's how the ancients knew it. They did it through channelings. Some of them did it through psychedelics, believe it or not, and others did it through their communication because of their connection with the cosmos. But it all comes down to that. Their connection as a group, as a civilization with the cosmos, and then these extraterrestrials, which is actually interdimensional beings, channeled this information to them and told them that this was something that was going to happen. Some people question if this is actually actually breaking free will of people if these ancient civilizations knew it through interdimensional beings. But all that was given to them was actually the physics of what was going to happen. This is why the Mayan calendar reflects all this as, say, a calendar system, because they knew just how the universe worked. This is almost like knowing physics. Physics is not a way to break free will. It is an understanding of how things work here. But this spiritual physics, if you want to call it this way, was known by them because it was handed down by interdimensional beings. So that's the first part that I have for the Ascension. In Module 2, we're going to talk about actually the science of Ascension and all the stuff that we have information about, and some other cool things that are important to know. I'll see you then.